I know that you guys had heard about Jill Stein asking for a recount in various states, Wisconsin, which she got, Michigan, which was stopped, and Pennsylvania, which was never allowed. This particular story regarding Michigan and the voting there that, in my opinion, should not have been stopped, was given about 10 seconds of airtime subsequent to the election, and I believe that it should have gotten a lot more press than it did. It seems that a bunch of voting machines, has been reported as many as 80, I believe the number was probably a lot higher, were broken and did not record properly. For some reason, I believe that the votes actually were not recorded. Now, I don't know a whole hell of a lot about Michigan, but I do know, obviously, that Detroit and the county that it's located in is or has a substantial number of African American residents. I know that East Lansing, not Lansing because that's the capital of the state of Michigan, but East Lansing has a tremendous number of African Americans there. I know that Grand Rapids has a large number of African Americans there. I know that there are several cities in Michigan that are highly segregated, okay? Now, they're just reporting that there were 80 machines that were broken, absolutely broken. So now, that leads me to think that there was an undercount of the actual votes that were cast in Michigan. Now, Donald Trump won Michigan by about 10,000 votes, okay? If you got 80, I'm gonna round it up and say there's 100 machines that were broken, and probably many more than that. If you have 100 machines that are broken on election day, and you have 1,000 people that vote on each machine, there's your 10,000, okay? And again, I think the number's higher. But at the same time, if they can't go back or could not go back and actually do an audit of the actual votes that were cast, in my mind, that leads to me not having any confidence in the fact that Donald Trump actually won Michigan. Now, look, I'm a realist. It is what it is, unless the Electoral College makes a determination that Trump really had an unfair advantage, an almost illegal unfair advantage. The Electoral College is going to vote Trump in, so it is what it is. But we definitely need to look into this, and we definitely need to do something about it, because this is a form of voter suppression. And we've seen voter suppression take place throughout the entire country, and it was primarily targeted towards the African American voter. Wisconsin, in this particular case, Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, in Georgia. I don't even have to go into the southern states with all of the new voter laws that had the effect of greatly reducing, in my opinion, the amount of African American college student and retired people in their ability to vote. So Donald Trump is right. I believe that this particular election was rigged, but it was rigged in his favor. Anyway, let me jump off into the problems that occurred in Michigan.
discovered more than 80 voting machines in Detroit were broken on Election Day. That cast doubts on Donald Trump's upset victory over Hillary Clinton by just over 10,000 votes. He's the first Republican presidential candidate to win Michigan in nearly 30 years. Secretary Clinton took 88% of the African-American vote in predominantly black Detroit. Of course, when state officials began a recount requested by Green Party nominee Jill Stein, they discovered that hundreds of precincts in Wayne County, which includes Detroit, had discrepancies in the number of votes that signed in to vote and the number of ballots cast. A recount was halted last week, and the Michigan Supreme Court denied Stein's appeal to continue the recount. State officials say it's unlikely the outcome would be any different. Stein's request for a recount in Pennsylvania was denied while a recount in Wisconsin certified that Trump won that state. Joining us via phone from New York City is Lawrence Norton, Deputy Director of the Democracy Program of the Brennan Center for Justice. Lawrence, the problem here is very simple, and that is when you have broken machines, they knew they were broken machines, yet nothing was done about it. Again, this is one of those examples of what I call voter suppression, when in suburban counties, they have machines that work, that are electronic, and you got hand-me-downs in places like Detroit.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rowan. I mean, this is a huge problem actually across the country. The good news, I suppose, for Michigan is that statewide, you all should be, Michigan should be replacing all of their machines in the next year or two. But I would say it's not only a problem of the machines, that's certainly a problem, but it's also a problem of resources and training of poll workers. When those machines went down, they should have had a method to make sure that people could keep voting and that they were keeping track of all the ballots. Something clearly went wrong during the election day, so that even when the machines went down, somehow they weren't keeping track of the ballots. When things like that happen, you get long lines, people get discouraged from voting, and that's obviously a huge problem. And I would say an additional question is, why did we only find out about this when there was a recount ordered? Why didn't we know about this when they were reconciling the ballots on election night? That's a big question. And I think the state of Michigan has to get to the bottom of it.
And Lawrence, why didn't we know on election day they were broken machines, so proper machines could be brought in, or the votes or the time could be extended in those places where machines were not operating?
Okay, and one thing about it, if you weren't aware of it, they test those machines the day before the election. So they knew that those machines were broken, but they didn't do anything about them. So now you tell me if that wasn't orchestrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, I was working on election protection. There's a coalition of groups that gets in calls from people, and we knew that the machines were failing on election day in Detroit. I didn't know they were this big, but it was a huge problem. There is no question about it.
Can I ask Director Norton a question? I'm thinking about the Voting Rights Act, and more importantly, the 14th and the 15th Amendment. Are we talking about an equal protection issue? And if so, whose responsibility is it to now take this up and perhaps pursue it in the courts? I mean, obviously, we're not looking for any hope from Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III to protect, but I mean, is this an equal protection issue?
Yeah, so the state of Michigan is doing what they're calling an audit to look at the causes of this, and I think we should wait for the report as to what happened. And because at this point, all we know is that there were real problems and no explanation for exactly what happened. But I would say certainly the voters in Detroit should have the same rights to vote and have their votes counted as the rest of the voters in the state of Michigan. So there could be the possibility, depending on what comes out of this, to bring some kind of action, no question.
And so we definitely see this issue and problem in terms of Michigan, but Larry, as you know, we've worked together on these issues. This is a nationwide problem. As you know, 2012, black folks waited to vote in line twice as long as whites did. We haven't had federal funding for machines really since HAVA. How do we move forward in terms of ensuring that people have machines, ensuring that there are great practices in urban areas in terms of ensuring that folks can vote? Because if we have long lines, we're deterring people from casting a ballot and participating.
Hi, Spencer. That's exactly right. I think a big thing is resources, frankly. I'd certainly like to see Congress step up, and the state should be funding these things statewide as opposed to just leaving it to the counties. One of the things that the Brennan Center found in its research, we looked at several states. This isn't all that surprising. When you leave it to the counties, the state doesn't provide any money. There are huge disparities in the amount of resources that different counties have. And wealthy counties tend to have new machines, the best resources, and the poorer counties don't, and they're left with old machines that should be replaced. So the one little piece of good news I have about Michigan is they seem to be doing a statewide replacement of machines, but in a lot of places they're not doing that. So in states like Virginia and others, the disparity, I'm afraid, is only going to get worse unless something is done.
All right, Lawrence Norton, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Coming up.
All right, so again, this is a very underreported story as far as the people in Detroit, and I would venture to say that it's a hell of a lot more widespread than just the city of Detroit is concerned as far as the ability to vote and the people of Detroit's votes actually counting in the overall election. You multiply that out across the country, and there is a distinct possibility that Hillary Clinton won by way more than 3 million votes.